Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Nathan Fox. That's Ben Olson. We're the founders of LSATdemon.com and our weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. Ben, on the LSAT, one question that we get all the time is, are there different levels of question difficulty?
Yes.
There are?
There are, yeah. I mean, the LSAC, the writers of the test itself, have broken each of the questions down into 5 levels. You could go even further if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. There are levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 1 being the easiest and 5 being the hardest. But even though, yeah, some questions are easier than others and some are harder than others, it's not something that people really need to worry about. At the end of the day, you're given a question, you need to figure it out, and you need to answer it. What difficulty level it is, in other words, how well other people have done on that question, doesn't really matter to you. We see people all the time who are doing very well and sometimes find a level 2 question challenging, or people who are just starting out and find a level 4 or 5 question not that hard. A lot of it depends on, did you understand what you just read?
A lot of what we do is debunking tips and gimmicky bullshit that people have learned elsewhere. A lot of other prep companies, for some reason, they make the LSAT seem hard by talking about question type difficulty and saying, oh, well, it's really important that you learn the question types so that you can skip the hard ones.
Yeah. As if there's some strong correlation between type and difficulty.
Right. So first of all, yes, parallel reasoning questions tend to take more time because there's more words in them.
Yep.
But that is not the same thing as being harder to actually solve. And so people, I think you just do yourself a big disservice by deciding in advance that some question types are harder than others. The truth is, you don't even have to worry about it because they arrange the section in such a way that the beginning of the section is going to be mostly easier questions and not a little bit easier, significantly easier questions.
Yeah.
In the first half of the section, let's say, compared to the second half of the section, those questions are dramatically harder overall on average, right? There's not a clear dividing line, by the way. Don't everybody start thinking that question number 13 is magical or something. It's not. It's just that, the beginning questions tend to be more of those level 1, level 2, level 3. Now, they might throw in a level 4 or 5 somewhere in the first 10. And they also might throw in a level 1 or level 2 at the end of the section. But you can't tell before doing the question how hard the question is.
Yeah.
Just because it's long doesn't mean it's not easy.
Yeah.
Just because it's short
doesn't mean it's easy. Yeah, totally.
Doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
Some of the very hardest questions are really short. Some of the easiest questions are really long. And the best way to make sure that you're doing, on average, easier questions than your competitors is to start at the beginning of the section, do fewer questions, but invest more time in those earlier, easier questions. Get paid for that work, and then randomly guess on the questions at the end of the section until you're well into the 170s. That needs to be your strategy. It's easier to reach 170 by not doing every question than it is by doing every question. I mean, it's so easy, Ben, to finish the section and score 150. Happens all the time.
Yep.
A related question that we get a lot is, what's a 170 breaker question? And I think that there's an irony in the fact that this even is a commonly asked question.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, because you can break 170 without ever doing what typically people would call a 170 breaker question.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? The hardest questions do tend to appear in the last 5, 6, 7 questions. And what I believe people would call a 170 breaker is just, okay, yeah, this was the hardest question on this section. It tends to appear at the end of the section. Very frequently, it'll be the last question or the second to last question will be what typically people would call a 170 breaker.
Yeah.
The reason why it's ironic is that many students could score 170 without ever even attempting that 170 breaker question.
Yeah, that wasn't the key to their 170.
People always think that the way they get to 170 is by getting the very hardest ones right. And they steer themselves wrong. You steer yourself completely wrong.
Yeah.
by thinking, I'm going to start by studying the hardest questions first.
Mm.
That's so wrong, because the vast majority of your points are always going to come from easy questions.
Also, build your foundation, right?
Totally.
You're
It's
learning
harvesting
bad
the low
habits.
hanging
Yeah.
fruit first,
Yeah.
right? People are like, no, I have to get every orange off of this tree.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get the 40-foot ladder and climb straight to the top and get the lean out over the thing and reach and grab that one,
Yeah.
you know? And meanwhile, it's like, dude, there's buckets full of them from ground level that you could just put in your basket calmly,
Yeah.
you know? And so when they say 170 breaker, I mean, really, like if they're talking about the very hardest questions on the test, those aren't there to differentiate the 169s from the 170s.
Mm-mm.
Those are there to differentiate the 178s from the 179s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in order to even get to that level, you have to have already gotten all the level 1, 2, 3, and 4 difficulty questions correct.
Yeah. So really a 170 breaker question, if that were a literal thing, it's probably more like level 4 questions that appear in the high teens.
Yeah. Yeah. Because to the level 5 difficulty questions, it's like, yeah, I mean, until you're solidly in the 170s,
Mm-hmm.
who cares? I don't care if you ever understand those questions.
Yeah.
If you're currently at 150,
Yep.
let's see you get all the level 1s and 2s and 3s right so that you can get to 160.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see you get all the level 1, 2, 3, and 4 right so that you can get to 170. And or even 173 or 175. There just aren't that many level 5 difficulty questions. They're just really not that. It certainly shouldn't be anybody's priority when you're studying.
No. And you know what's wild too is that I think that people, when they think about level 5 questions, they think about like the difficulty in logic that's required. But the irony is that that's not what makes level 5 questions typically level 5. What makes them hard is that the wording is such that people don't understand exactly what they read as often as they would for like an easier question. So the logic isn't actually that hard. And so
No.
if you slow down, try to make sense of each phrase and sentence, then all of a sudden you realize what's being said, and it becomes a very easy question because the underlying logic is not tricky or mystical or anything like that.
Yeah. Not only that, but there are shortcuts all the time where a level 5 difficulty question for everyone else is experienced by me or Ben or one of our other teachers or many of our students as a level 1 difficulty question because they read the first sentence of the passage well enough to understand the game before they even wasted their time reading the
Yeah.
rest of it.
Yeah.
How many times do you read that first sentence and you've already seen kind of like a shortcut? You're
Mhm.
like, well, wait a second now. I already see that you've made kind of an error there between that first and second clause of your first sentence.
Yeah. You're
I'm
talking
already
about
mad about
correlation. Yeah.
I'm already mad about your logic. And then they go on and on and on. And many people miss it because they just didn't unpack that first sentence when they read it. They
Mhm.
thought they understood it, right? They just kind of glossed it and they went, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. No, but it didn't make sense. And if you had taken the time to read it well enough to understand why it didn't make sense, then you already know the answer to this level 5 question after even just reading the first sentence of the passage. But you have to actually read it. You have
Yeah.
to actually comprehend it. At every level, no matter if you're trying to break 150, 160, or 170, at every level, at least half your mistakes are going to come from just not reading well enough. You just didn't really read it. You just didn't really understand it. There was some aspect of it that you didn't really read and understand. And so that's why students need to really slow down and focus on accuracy first, just solving questions, let the test come to you, let it be easy by actually understanding what you're reading.
Mm-hmm.
Last words?
No, just focus on one question at a time and don't worry about difficulty.
Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you would like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.